Over 110,000 of Ehud Barak's emails were hacked. Now, he's the ex prime minister of Israel who claimed publicly that he had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. However, we do have a picture of him here going in and out of Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse in New York, but yet he had nothing to do with him. Now, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a disgraced money guy with dark secrets. He was building something way more dangerous, a global surveillance empire that connected American tech billionaires, Russian oligarchs, and Israeli intelligence veterans. Hey everyone, it's Delania. Today we're diving deep into the leaked emails that reveal Epstein's final, most chilling ambition. I've done other videos on Carbyne, Valor, Unit 8200 that tie Israel to US surveillance in APAC, and I will attach those in the show notes. But it does really explain a lot in why Israel seems to have America by the balls and why APAC has so much power. Ehud has been viciously denying being caught up with Epstein's drama, but these emails tell a completely different story. He had posted right when the whole Epstein files started to come out again, he had posted, I think it was on X, and I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it, but essentially saying, I had nothing to do with Epstein. What are you talking about? I have nothing to do with him. Yet all these emails are now coming to the surface. So where did it all begin? Where did his relationship with Epstein start? Well, it began probably back about 2015, and that was just 6 years after Epstein's first conviction for soliciting prostitution. Most people assumed he would retreat from public life, but newly leaked emails from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak's inbox tell a very different story. They weren't just emails, they were stolen by a hacking group called Handala. And this is their banner, I guess, online. And they quietly released this to journalists back in May 2025, so just a few months ago. But what they reveal is a big web of tech businesses and government surveillance. And I actually found this letter here from them. And I think they're writing it to Bibi Netanyahu, but essentially it says 110,000 secret emails of the former prime minister. This is Ehud Barak, your former prime minister. We have been present in your prime minister's office for decades. We have sat in your most secret meetings, listened, and made a conscious decision. A warning for Bibi. Last night, you heard the voice of resistance. You have seen the military and intelligence power of the resistance. If you make a stupid decision, your destruction is very easy. The answer will be devastating resistance. As we were in Ehud's office for many years, we're also present now, but we react to the time. Well, a lot of resistance there in that message. So, yeah, they're meaning business. So they're a big hacking group. So what really happened after, Epstein's conviction, he just didn't disappear. It's almost like he pivoted into something way more sensitive and industrial. And that became his surveillance technology work. And he decided, it seems like that his whole business was blackmailing people. And that's why I don't believe for one second that there is no files or there's an abundance of tech or surveillance from all his properties from New York to Epstein Island. Like, it's crazy. So, and then there's nothing there, but yet he now is the master of surveillance technology, and he wasn't working alone. So you have a disgraced financier, I say, AKA a Mossad agent, who teams up with a former Israeli prime minister to build a spy network. Jeffrey Epstein partnered with Ehud to invest in a company called Reporty Homeland Security, this one here, and a company that would later become Carbyne. Like I said, I did a whole video on Carbyne and how it intertwines in all of this. But here's where it gets very interesting. That leaked emails show Epstein wasn't just a passive investor. He was the connector, the puppet master, pulling strings across continents. In one email, he tells Barak he wants to be the nexus between private money and public surveillance. So essentially, that's where he saw himself. That's where his position was, is taking these private entities and making them so great that essentially the countries would have to use their technology because it would be better than anything that they could produce on their own. So that's where the connection was between these two men. And it started way back in January 2014, way back. So this is kind of like the timeline here. It does get very confusing, so I kind of just figured out this timeline. So, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak became involved with the company Carbyne in 2015, and he left his position on the board in 2020. So, in 2015, Barak invested approximately $1 million in this tech startup, which was known at the time as Reporty Homeland Security. He became the company's chairman the same year. In a controversial revelation in 2019, it was reported that the financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein secretly funded a significant portion of this company, which I'll show you the connection there. So in early 2018, company rebrands to Carbyne. The company changed its name from Reporty Homeland Security to Carbyne. 2020, Barak steps down from the board. Effectively May 1st, 2020, Barak resigned from Carbyne's board of directors. He stated that after almost 6 years with the company, he was leaving to focus on other endeavors. His departure came when it was exposed with his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So here, this is essentially how this is all tied together. So you have Ehud Barak, who started this company, and how Jeffrey Epstein got entangled, and they didn't know this until 2019 because it only came out after he passed away, and they were going through his finances. His family was going through his finances, and they figured out that he was involved. That's the only way they found out, because if you look at Jeffrey Epstein, you go down the Southern Trust Company. So he made this LLC in the Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and he invested $1 million. And then Nicole Junkerman there, who, just looking at some of the flight logs, she was on the Lolita Express a lot of times. So they invested in some, which was Ehud Barak's company, and they owned 100% of the Series A preferred stock of Carbyne. Later, Andrew and Trader, he invests in like 23.4% into the Series A1 preferred stock. So that's just a level down. So he's kind of like the second investor into Carbyne. And if you see there, he is actually a relative of the Russian Viktor Belkesberg. So that's kind of how it all ties together there. Very much a weave. But yes, Jeffrey Epstein was very, very much involved. And what I find most interesting is that it was a secret. No one even knew about it till after he passed away. So the connection between these two guys started way back in 2014. Barak writes to Epstein, "I'm still trying to arrange that security guys will not come with us to the island. Does that work for you?" And he's talking about Little St. James Island. And that was, of course, Epstein's infamous island. And later that year, after visiting the island, Barak sends a thank you note. Thanks for the hospitality. So when he originally went there to St. John's Island, the first email was January 2014. And so this one, the second one saying thanks for the hospitality. So he must have been there multiple times, but this email was sent in December 2014. So he was originally there at first in January. First one here is January 10th, 2014, goes to the island, I don't know how many times, and then sends another email in December 14th, 2014 saying, "Wow, great hospitality." So these weren't formal, obviously, they're having formal business meetings there on Jeffrey Epstein Island. They were obviously friends. But, Epstein's ambitions stretched far beyond his partnership with Barak. He was hunting bigger prey. And there comes Peter Thiel. So this is Peter Thiel. And if you recognize the other guy, that is Elon Musk. So Elon Musk and Peter Thiel started PayPal late, I think it was 1990s, late 90s. So they were the co-founders of, PayPal. And then later he created another company called Palantir, which I also did a video on that as well. So which is another company that is involved in surveillance. So in April 2014, Barak was invited to a meeting with Peter Thiel. He says, "Think Peter Thiel could be very interesting, but I'm flying to Europe. Next time best." I have Peter Thiel on the 19th, um, and the former president of the Maldives. So this was written back in April 28th, 2014. So this is where it goes way back. So he was trying to orchestrate all these highest level connections in the tech industry way back in 2014. And then in May, it seems like they're going to be able to make the meeting with Peter Thiel. He's coming for dinner on the 9th. And then we have the correspondence here. So he was orchestrating all these big connections within the big American tech companies. And the strategy worked. By 2016, Epstein was personally pitching Reporty to Valor Ventures. And here's Valor Ventures here. And that was Peter Thiel's investment fund. Andrew McCormick, a general partner, responded enthusiastically. "We'd love to hear about Reportedly. Thanks for thinking about us." He wrote that here in this email. Yeah, we're want to get on board. Yes, we are in on it. So that was Peter Thiel's company, Valor Ventures. At that point, the initial pitch was rejected as premature. Something remarkable happened. Back in 2018, Thiel's Founders Fund joined a $15 million funding round for the company. Epstein had successfully penetrated Silicon Valley's surveillance ecosystem. So again, back with Peter Thiel and in his little circle there, you'll see the Valor and Founders Fund. So he invested $15 million into which is now Carbyne. Well, he was courting all these American tech titans. Epstein was simultaneously playing a different game with Russian elites. In 2015, he introduced Barak to Sergei Belikov, a former Russian deputy minister of economic development. But Epstein wasn't content with a simple introduction. In a revealing email to Barak, he wrote, "I suggest you send him a note that states that you think Putin and his advisors would benefit from spending some time with Jeffrey to discuss markets, currency, and the financial system, and that I am not political." Epstein was positioning himself as an apolitical dealmaker while allegedly offering advice on circumventing U.S. sanctions against Russia. And he didn't go under the radar because Senator Ron Wyden later alleged that Epstein had transactions with sanctions Russian banks totaling, like he was trying to circumvent the tariffs with Russia, and he totally got around that. And this Ron Wyden was kind of onto him. So he said that he had what 400 or 4,725 wire transactions. And so Ron Wyden was absolutely 100% onto him. And he said that the Treasury files show Epstein had transactions with sanctioned Russian banks totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. And he wrote this series of notes here, which I thought was also very interesting. And he says, "Big news from my investigations on Epstein's sex trafficking operation. The Trump administration has an Epstein file detailing 4,725 wire transfers, almost 1 billion flowing through just one of the banks, hundreds of millions through others. The Trump administration claims it doesn't have enough evidence to investigate. If you ask me, that's 4,725 lines of an investigation right there, and that should be the start of it. Epstein had to pay for all his sex trafficking somehow. Further evidence shows he used Russian banks to process hundreds of millions in payments. Again, this is the info possession in the Trump administration, but they're refusing to investigate." So that's from, an American senator right there. And then the web just keeps growing and gets more complex from there. When Barak shared intelligence company pitch materials with Epstein, they presented to the Fifth Dimension. And this is a company that's backed by Putin ally Viktor Velkesberg. And if you go back, and I'm going to bring this back up here. So Viktor Velkesberg, again, so we go back here. He is attached to Andrew. their relatives who invested in Carbyne. So they're all attached. They're all attached here. So the company promised to transform massive scale data from multiple feeds into actionable intelligence using artificial intelligence. It was the kind of surveillance capability that would be way heads above than any competition at that time. Throughout their correspondence, Epstein revealed an obsession with technology that went far beyond normal business interests. He regularly sent Barak articles about cyber warfare, emergency preparedness, Russian nanotechnology, and Unit 8200. So, Unit 8200, that's Israel's equivalent of the NSA. So, that's a very, very detailed intelligence operation. And it was backed by the top Israeli intelligence, are part of this Unit 8200. In one of his messages, he says, I enjoy strategy and strategic planning. He wrote this in 2015. And at the same time, I am amazed by the rate at which technology has moved into the private sector. Many corporations are looking for new military like perspective on management. Like, this wasn't just a regular casual interest. This was someone studying how military intelligence techniques could be weaponized in civilian contexts. Epstein saw surveillance technology as his pathway to power, and he was building the network to make it happen. And I find perhaps like the most disturbing is how carefully this network was designed to hide Epstein's involvement. Pinchas Bukris, co-founder of Reporty and former director of Unit 8200, told Israel newspaper Haaretz in 2019, Barak brought the money, and as far as I'm concerned, it's his. I don't know how Epstein I don't know him, I have never met him, but the leaked emails tell a different story. They show Barak scheduled virtual meetings with both Epstein and Bukris together and altered investment terms based on Barak's input. The entire structure was designed to conceal Epstein's role while maintaining his control. When Epstein was rearrested in July 2019, the carefully constructed facade crumbled. Barak quickly announced he was dissolving his partnership with Epstein, the surveillance empire they had begun to build together. And like I said, the only reason they found out that Epstein was even involved was because when he passed away, his family they were going through all his financial records. No one knew he was involved with this at all, even though he had invested over $1 million. So here's Barak again. Hi, Jeff. Just seeing it Saturday, tomorrow, Monday are possible. If this is still relevant, PI, let us know. Enjoyed today very much. And now they're bringing in Woody Allen, Rothschild for dinner. Are you guys free? So what does this all mean? Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a predator. He was building something far more dangerous. He's using his connection and his wealth. He was creating a global surveillance network that connected American tech billionaires, Russian oligarchs, and Israeli intelligence veterans. Imagine if he had succeeded. Imagine a world where emergency dispatch systems, crowd surveillance technology, and cybersecurity infrastructure was controlled by someone like a Jeffrey Epstein and his track record. The implications are just horrifying. Peter Thiel later admitted to meeting with Epstein multiple times in 2014, saying, I didn't think enough about what Epstein's agenda might have been. I question that. But maybe that was exactly the point. Maybe Epstein's greatest skill wasn't just exploitation, it was making powerful people believe they were using him when in reality he was actually using them. The emails end in 2016, 3 years before Epstein's final arrest. We'll never know how far his surveillance empire might have reached, but one thing is clear: Jeffrey Epstein's ambitions extended far beyond what we ever imagined, into the very infrastructure that watches all over us. So, what do you guys think? Was Epstein building a global spy empire, or was he just another rich guy trying to stay relevant? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives. And please go back. Like I said, I'll link them in the show notes. But this is like my dad always used to say, oh, what tangled webs we weave. And this is a tangled web between Carbyne, Barak, Epstein, Peter Thiel. It's just this crazy web. And as you go down each rabbit hole, you'll see, I used to think all roads lead back to Epstein, but just follow the money trail, and it explains a lot. And I also did another video on Apex, and it also really makes it clear why Apex has so much control over the US. So again, guys, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.